All right, Mike, we're ready to talk about the election, give it a little update on the election. We're in the glide path now, as they say in the Navy. We're approaching election day, and we've got a lot of updates on what we think are going to some of the likely outcomes. Let's start with sort of looking at where the polling numbers are today and how they've been trending, because as we get closer, the polling numbers theoretically become more accurate. So let's give the viewers an update here.
Yeah, this will focus in on the red line. So that's the polling averages from Real Clear Politics. That's Trump minus Biden. So what you see right now is Trump is down by about 9 points, 9.2 points. And right on sort of the evening of the presidential debate, he had it within shouting distance, if you will. He was down about 6 points, which was a similar margin he had relative to Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election at a similar point in time. At this point, it looks like he has much more ground to make up.
Right. Now that he's past COVID, he's out on the election trail every night with his big crowd of people campaigning. Let's talk about the broader election numbers. I mean, I think if we look at the race for the swing states, like back in the last election, there was quite a bit of thought around the Democrats had a very solid lead in a lot of these swing states, but come election night, they found out that they didn't have the lead they actually had. So talk us through where we are with that today in this election.
Yeah, I was looking at 6 swing states, so Arizona, Pennsylvania, Florida, Wisconsin, North Carolina, and what is that, Michigan as well? Mm-hmm. And yeah, basically what we're saying, the red line is just a simple average. So you see his lead or his deficit in those swing states per the polling numbers has gotten worse here recently. But as you were saying, on election day in 2016, Trump was trailing in half of these states, and on average was trailing by about a point across the 6 states, just a simple average. And we obviously know what happened. He went on to win all of them. So you definitely have to take these numbers with a grain of salt. And that grain of salt could be even bigger in 2020 because the polling numbers, generally, the perception is they're becoming more accurate as we approach the election, but they're probably going to be less accurate than they have been in prior elections because of COVID and how much people are moving from state to state. It's very difficult to capture accurately what's going to happen.
Right. And let's add into this the Senate races. I think most people right now see it as a toss-up. Do we have any insights there in terms of what might happen in the Senate?
Yeah, I think that's a good kickoff to start talking about, market implications of different political makeups. Right now, the Senate is the only one that looks like it's a toss-up or in question. And so that's going to be extremely important. If the Republicans are able to maintain the Senate, then the theory would be that they could create gridlock. But even if the Democrats are able to win the Senate, but by a small margin, you could potentially see a more moderate path of policies. But if the Democrats win by a large margin, that's the full-on blue sweep type scenario.
Yeah, so let's talk through the 4 outcomes in particular and sort of lay out what we think are the most likely short-term and long-term scenarios. So Biden wins, Congress is blue, and the Senate's blue, and we end up with an outcome that's pretty bullish for the markets, I would suspect, right? So talk us through that.
The overarching thing, we just talked about how there was a trend pre-COVID and COVID accelerated it. The trend has been there's more monetary and fiscal stimulus. That's what's really been driving markets. This election is a pit stop to determine the size and shape of that stimulus over time. And so if that's what the market wants, a blue sweep scenario is by far the largest in terms of stimulus overall, but more of it being shifted towards fiscal.
If you think about that fiscal stimulus in terms of timing and length, you're looking at probably multiple years of this as they approach midterms and probably don't want to give up their lead in the Senate. So they'll be very active on the stimulus side to ensure that they continue through midterms and control.
Right. Yeah. And we think ultimately the fiscal stimulus positive impact outweighs some of the potential tax implications. You have to think, how are we going to pay for the stimulus? And the Democrats have a plan for that. But the potential tax increases, if they are implemented, are probably going to be later than most people think, and they're probably going to be more moderate than most people fear. So net, we think the stimulus probably outweighs, and the market agrees mostly, the stimulus of a blue sweep outweighs the potential tax implications that are uncertain and further down the road.
Right. So let's shift. Okay, Biden wins. The Senate stays red. We're probably in a situation where there's still stimulus, but it's just the complexion's different and the Fed's asked to do more, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, in that situation, fiscal stimulus, it would probably pass, but it would most likely be smaller, less impressive. And then, it's not, if the economy isn't going to get a boost from fiscal stimulus in the near term, then the Fed is just going to have to do more. The Fed, you can look at in all these scenarios, they're basically all in, and they would like to be able to work with a Democratic Congress to sort of provide joint monetary and fiscal stimulus, things like MMT, things like direct payments to individuals, all those types of things. If we have Republican-controlled House and Senate, or either one of those, they're not going to be able to work with Congress on those types of stimulus packages. So they're going to have to go to tried and true monetary stimulus type techniques to boost financial markets and the economy. So they're going to be looking at things like capping interest rates, buying more assets, expanding the types of assets they're going to buy. There's just going to be a lot of pressure on them to try to reaccelerate economic growth. And so they're going to have to dig deeper into their bag of tricks.
All right. Okay. So let's shift gears and see if what's the likely outcome should Trump win and Congress or the Senate stay red?
You get Trump and then red Senate, Democratic House, something like that. It wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. What the picture we're kind of painting here is, regardless of the scenario, you're going to have more stimulus in total.
Right. Yeah.
But as you approach gridlock, anything away from a blue sweep, the stimulus makeup, a lot more pressure is going to fall on the Fed. And the Fed is really good at supporting asset prices, but they're not really good at supporting economic growth. That's fiscal stimulus's role. So if you were to get a Trump win and you were to get gridlock, or you would get a red sweep, you're probably going to see more of the same, where the Fed is called on to do a lot. The same types of stocks are going to do well in the market. Wealth, income inequality is probably going to be maintained where it is. You won't have this big transfer of wealth from the wealthy to the less wealthy. So that would be sort of a more of the same scenario, but not necessarily a bad thing.
All outcomes, as we look at them over the long term, lead to more stimulus, which will be supportive of equity markets in general. So that's just a matter of timing, and the complexion of the stimulus will determine where the investment opportunities are.